Simon,
Well, good morning.
good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
No worries.
Do you want to tell us a little about yourself and how a lawyer from Hobart made his way to London?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Australian. I'm from Tasmania, from Hobart, a little city right down the bottom of Tasmania. And I grew up there, grew up on a farm. Went to Hobart when I finished school and studied finance and law. I never had any intention of being a lawyer, but I wanted to be an accountant. And then my parents, being very well-meaning, they were like, well, there's lots of accounting graduates every year. Why don't you think about doing something else with that, just to try and set yourself apart? And like I said, I had absolutely no interest in law, but I got in to do it. So I thought, well, why don't I give it a go? And then endured through this law degree. I hated all of it, but I just assumed that hating your study was the price you paid to be at university and to drink and that kind of stuff. So I did that for 5 years, got through, and I thought, well, it seems crazy to study law and not get admitted. So then I did another year and got admitted, and then I was like, well, why would you get admitted to be a lawyer and not practice? So then I started practicing law, and I was like, wow, this still really sucks. And so, and I'm going up to Tasmania, this little island down the bottom of the world, a long way from everywhere, and so I just wanted to get out like lots of Tasmanians do. And so I moved to Canada, I went to the snow, I got a job as a cook, and so I cooked burgers in a ski resort for a winter. Then spent some time traveling around Canada, and eventually ended up back in London. And this was just after September 11 and the global slowdown. And I just had assumed I'd step out of law and into something like investment banking or something different. But the reality was really different. The idea that you could just step into a new role without any real experience doing it was pretty fictitious. And so, particularly given the kind of tightening the job market and that kind of stuff after September 11. And so, I ended up falling back into law here, and did another 3 years working just around the corner from here in an American law firm, working in what's called synthetic securitization, which is basically the stuff that caused the global financial crisis. So, I was doing that between 2003 and 2005. And then I really knew I hated it. And so basically, I've done a bunch of different stuff. I left the law. It's a really I thought it was a big decision, but actually I think it's the best decision I ever made. I wouldn't have survived doing that kind of work for very long. So since then, I've done a bunch of different stuff. So immediately after leaving the law, I had this sort of knee-jerk reaction and going from kind of very well-paid corporate work to incredibly poorly paid cycle courier work in Sydney. So I did a year riding my bike, just delivering pieces of paper. And then after that, started a small business with my sister in Tasmania. We were Tasmania's first mobile espresso business. So coffee culture is very big in Australia. You had customers who were going to outdoor events and not being able to enjoy the kind of coffee that they were accustomed to, and so we took it to them.
Your barista assistant?
Yeah, exactly. And so did that for a while, and on and off. The great thing about that was because it was a family business, I could kind of leave and go and do other stuff and come back to it. So I spent a year working for a not-for-profit, but really, I've enjoyed living in London. And so every time I've moved back to Australia, I've kind of survived through a year or two and then ended up coming back. And so the same cycle repeated itself. And so I came back in 2012, ostensibly on a 4-week holiday. I came back for the Olympics and to go to a music festival that I really liked. And then I was at the end of the 4 weeks, I was like, I'm having a pretty good time. So I kind of pushed it back to 8 weeks. At the end of 8 weeks, I was like, yes, pretty good over here, isn't it? So, then I bought a bike and went on a 4-week cycle touring trip in Italy. And it's like, the end of October came around. I was like, it's pretty good here, isn't it? And then I just said, you know what, I'm not going home. So I hadn't actually intended to move back, but I just never left. And so I had to ring up the house I was living in and told them to kind of just move all my stuff into the garage and to find someone else for it. And I needed to find a job. And so back then, a good friend of mine, a guy I'd known from university, was actually the head of Accelerator, the guy who, Toby's predecessor, if you know Toby. And so I went to have a coffee with him, and I was like, look, Rich, I'm in London, I'm not leaving, and if I'm going to stay, I need a job. And we just went to have a chat about, the kind of field I might go into, having worked in corporate, not wanting to go back, and really enjoying working in smaller businesses where you get a lot more exposure to, breadth of task, more responsibility and that kind of stuff. I knew I wanted to keep doing that. And so we talked about a few options, but then he said, you know what, we've had someone from our team just resign on really short notice, and we need someone to kind of help us out for a couple of months while we recruit the replacement. And so I just started doing it. I started working at Accelerator. So, here I am, having done a bit of business stuff, but never really advised people on how to start businesses. And so I sort of stepped into this role, and I did it for a few months, and I felt like a complete fraud. It's because, you know, I hadn't had this training in this stuff, and all I'd done was kind of a bunch of different types of work. But then the best advice Rich ever gave me was, you know, it doesn't matter that you don't feel you don't know this stuff, you know more than they do. And it was entirely true. Like, you know, I felt like I didn't know anything, you know, when you compare yourself to kind of successful business people, whatever, but, you know, common sense and real world experience is tremendously valuable. And so, you know, I went stay there for a few months, and then they recruited for this position, and I thought, well, I mean, I'm not doing anything else, I might as well apply for it. And 6.5 years later, here I am.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little overview of what the incubator, the accelerator group does, and then your role with
Yeah, totally. So Accelerator does two main things. So the first thing, and the business of Accelerator, is as a business incubator. So we have 5 floors of physical space. We have open plan co-working space on the ground floor and meeting rooms. And then we have 4 floors of private offices. And so we're a home for tech startups. So early stage tech startups. So companies that need a physical home for their team, and they choose to go into a business incubator because they want the convenience of it. So they pay a single monthly fee for which they get a private office, they get a manned reception, they get meeting rooms, they get in-house IT support, and all of that stuff rolled into one. And they get community, which is really what sets us apart from, you know, just a serviced office. And so the community is a really important part of it. So being in a physical place with companies who are operating in the same vertical, so tech companies that are at a similar stage, so typically they've raised a seed round of investment, which is normally the first round of investment you raise, or a slightly later stage, and they're on a pretty high growth trajectory. And so for us, cultivating that community aspect is a really important part of what we do. The other thing that happens at Accelerator is the Student Enterprise Program, which is the free advice and support made available to all of our students and recent graduates. So typically up to 5 years, we're happy to keep working with people that are interested in starting a business or learning entrepreneurial skills. And so that's the part that me and my colleague Natasha are primarily responsible for. So organising those events, you know, making sure that there's a different breadth of kind of both content but also commitment, so people can come along for a 2-hour workshop or a 12-week summer program, or basically anything in between. A number of people from this group took part in our recent startup sprint, which was an intense 48-hour, you know, weekend, you know, hackathon for entrepreneurs, where people try and start a company in a weekend. So that's it in a nutshell. The one thing I'll say, like, about that's really unique, that makes Accelerator unique, and I think better than just about any other, you know, university enterprise hub in the country, is that there are a few things. One is that we've been doing this longer than almost any other university. So, you know, we have a dedicated startup space that's off campus and outside the curriculum, and it has real companies in it, in the heart of Tech City, which is, you know, the centre for startup activity in all of the UK. And there are only 2 other universities in the entire country that can sort of lay claim to have any connection to Tech City, and some of them don't have their own space there in any event. The other thing is, and this is the most important part of it, is that it's a real world ecosystem. And so other universities have incubators where they have the companies in, but they're on campus, and so they lack that, they have a university flavour to them. You know, ours is, you know, again, off campus in this incredible part of London where there are, you know, where our students get access to these sort of, you know, real world businesses doing awesome stuff. And the final thing that makes us different is that whenever companies come into our community, and we're quite selective about who we bring into Accelerator, the founders undertake to give back 2 days of their time per year to our students and graduates at London Met. And so that's probably the most important part of it. So we've got this huge pool of incredibly talented resource to give back directly to our students and graduates, whether it's one-to-one mentors, as judges on panels, setting a live brief for a good student group to work on, or something like that.
Fantastic. You mentioned the 38-hour hackathon, and we had some good stories about that.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other programs or activities?
Yeah, I mean, one that's happening right now, or in fact the deadline for was midnight last night, is our annual pitching competition, our Big Idea Challenge, which I hope that everybody was able to hear about. And so that's our funnel builder, so to speak. And so, you know, I'm selfish. My job, or one of my metrics of success, is having new businesses created. And my job is easiest when I'm working with, you know, the smartest and most passionate students that have the best ideas. But, you know, the university is like a gold mine or a diamond mine, and their diamonds are hidden in the mine. And so I've somehow got to get out into the mine of the university, and find the diamonds. And so our funnel builder is this, or our tool for prospecting is the Big Idea Challenge. And so we do this every year. We promote it for 2 months. We pull together a big pool of prizes, which includes cash, dedicated spots on our Launchpad program, which I'll speak about in a moment. Websites, mentoring, PR advice, brand and logo packages, and that kind of stuff. And we incentivize students who have ideas for businesses or social enterprises to come and talk to us, or to enter an idea in the competition. And by doing so, then it puts them on our radar. So ideally, they progress through the competition and become one of our finalists. But even those that aren't, well, at least once we've seen their idea and what they want to do, we can signpost them to other programs that might be a better fit for them. So that's one program. So the deadline for that was last night. We've got about 200 entries into that competition. And so over the course of the next sort of 5 or 6 weeks, we'll be whittling that down to probably 4 finalists in each of our 3 categories, so 12 finalists. And then we'll be working out which is the big idea of 2019. One of the programs I just mentioned was our Launchpad program, which is our most intensive program. So for any of you that have an idea that you really want to go deeper with, this program runs over the summer. And so it's been evolving. The first time we ran this was in 2013, back when we were still feeling our way with what made a great program as well. And so the good thing about, one of the good things about what we do is that we eat our own dog food. So we're continually trying stuff and testing how customers react with it, and then refining it for kind of future iterations. And so we ran this first, what was then called the Hatchery program is now the Launch program back in 2013, and it was a 12-month program. We thought that's a good amount of time for someone to be able to kind of really get into a business idea and to start it, hopefully. And we sort of, alongside the time and giving people access to our expertise in space and accelerator, we gave them kind of a series of workshops on important early stage business topics. And what we found was that the program didn't really work. And that was because there's a classic saying that a task will expand the amount of time available to complete it. And we found that, and we found that people just weren't doing anything. They weren't under enough pressure. There was no heat, no kind of, deadline to bump into. Our business, the end of the program is 12 months away. And so people just basically did nothing. And so the next time it was a 6-month program, still too long. So now we brought it all the way back to 12 weeks. In fact, we got as short as 10 weeks. We've gone back out to 12. But basically what we're pushing people to do in this program, which runs over the summer. Now we used to run it during term time, but you get someone's attention for 5 weeks or 6 weeks, and then assessment would hit or exams, and they disappear, which is really understandable. And so now we run it over the summer to avoid clashing with any of that stuff. And so what it is, it's a 12-week program. It's based on lean startup principles, which is all about around kind of evidence-based entrepreneurship. So instead of acting on hunches, let's instead make sure our understanding of our customer's problem and our solution is built on facts. And so what we're pushing participants to do is to validate a commercial opportunity or a business opportunity in that 12 weeks. So we're not looking for them to start it. What we want them to do is to find a problem worth solving, to develop a solution. I don't think build the solution, but just develop the concept for it, to test that concept with customers, and to see some signs of life. We also want to look at kind of market opportunity. Yeah, we've got a problem here. Yeah, it seems that customers are interested in our solution, but how much will they pay to have that sold? How frequently will they pay that? And are there enough of them prepared to pay that for this to be a worthwhile investment of our time? So is there a market opportunity there? So that's really what we're looking for, the minimum that we want people to do in the 12 weeks. Some teams move faster and they actually start building out a solution, finding their first customers, which traction is really great come pitch day. And the program does, it culminates with a pitch where we're asking participants to draw a line under everything they've done, to present their findings, in a scientific way, and then to draw a conclusion on whether they think they should invest more of their time in this business. Because really, any entrepreneur is the first investor in their own business. And your time is the most valuable resource that you have, considering, the qualification you're all about to have and the opportunity cost. It's like, yeah, I'm working on this business, which is currently paying me zero. I could be working as a consultant or doing something else and getting paid quite handsomely. So should I invest 6 months or 12 months more of my life in this business? So we're wanting people to establish in 3 months what it was taking other people 18 months or longer to work out previously.
Fantastic. So as a budding new MBA candidate, what types of benefits do you think are provided in getting involved with the Accelerator program?
Totally. Well, the area where we're going to be able to create the most value is in around new business creation. So for people that want to actually, start a business, whether it's going to be as a consultant or being self-employed in some way, or by starting another business for a new product or service. I mean, that's where our expertise lies. Specifically with the kind of the latter style. I mean, obviously on the, being self-employed, then we've got a lot of good stuff around, knowing who your customers are, what value you're creating for them, how you might find them, engage them, and that kind of stuff. But really it's around sort of testing new or interesting ideas for businesses. Alongside that, we also have obviously a network of companies that we work with. So the startups at Accelerator, there are around 30 of those. And we have a broader network of alumni that have come out of Accelerator. So to the extent that you want to work with a small but rapidly growing business, then there's also opportunities for things like that depending on your skills. Some of you're doing kind of cybersecurity and things like that. Well, then obviously there's a really natural fit with a number of the companies that we work with at Accelerator. But again, given the broad commercial skills you all have, then there's opportunities to utilize those as well.
Okay, can you give us an idea of some of the 30 companies that you mentioned?
Yeah, cool. One of, our big success stories at the moment is a business called Qdini. And that was co-founded by a London Met graduate. He did mobile computing, a master's in mobile computing, called Fraser Hardy, and his co-founder called Imogen. And they met at a hackathon, a tech hackathon, where they ended up solving, the problem they were solving was around queuing at an amusement park. But the solution involved using mobile technology. And at the end of the weekend, they were like, well, we really like working together. We think there's something in our solution. And they went further with it. So what they ended up developing was, anyway, let me start with problem. So the problem they're trying to solve is the problem of the queue. Queuing in a restaurant, queuing in a shop for something, all of which is frustrating, impacts the customer's experience, and can result in customer walkout, which costs businesses revenue. So they thought, well, let's try and solve the problem of queuing using mobile phones. And so what they did was that they developed a product called Qdini, sort of riffing on the whole Harry Houdini and escaping the queue. And they started targeting restaurants. And so London's very popular, restaurants become, they trend, you try and get a table there, you can't get a table. And so typically that would result in a customer walkout. Or what their solution enables someone to do now is to leave their mobile, they're greeted by someone with an iPad and their app, they take their mobile number and they get a spot in a virtual queue where they can monitor how quickly they move through it, how long the wait is until they get a table, which enables them to go and do whatever they want with their time. Go shopping, sit in the sun, play with their dog, whatever it might be. And so these businesses were getting less walkout. So they started working with restaurants, but restaurants, they aren't big businesses, they typically have 1 or 2 outlets. So they found that they weren't really growing as quickly as they wanted to. They were then really fortunate in they got into Wyra, which is an accelerator program backed by Telefonica, which owns O2. And so having taken part in that and getting access to the network, Telefonica's network, they then were rolled out, taking a step back, O2 and any mobile phone shop had a big problem where customers walking into their stores, wanted to talk to someone about a new handset or a plan, not being able to see someone available and walking out. And given the length of time that they pay every month for often years at a time, that's a really significant lost revenue opportunity for a business like a mobile phone provider. And so they rolled out this technology in all of their stores nationally. So if you walk into an O2 store now, you'll be greeted by someone using Qdini's technology. And so they're starting to be rolled out in House of Fraser, John Lewis, O2, and lots of other kind of click and collect type places now. And so they've just raised another £3.5 million in a Series A investment. Their team is now 35 people, so having moved into Accelerator as a team of 4, and they're really starting to grow more and more quickly. So they'll very soon outgrow us. A couple of other examples. We have a team called, what are they called? The name will come back to me, but they're looking to kill ticketing on public transport. And so having to buy and use a physical ticket or even an Oyster card. What they want to use, or they are using, they've just rolled out their first deployment in Germany, is using mobile phones, Bluetooth technology and beacons on transport, which means you just hop on and hop off wherever you go. And so really doing away with turnstiles, with ticketing and that kind of stuff. And so that's a business which has massive potential market. and is feeling its first steps. So they're going to be raising a Series A investment this year. Most of the businesses we have at Accelerator are sort of B2B, business to business. One example of a B2C business, and they're the only hardware business we have at Accelerator, is called Conido. And what they're doing is building the first infant health tracker. And so basically, it's a little band that the baby wears, and they're targeting, obviously, hyper concerned parents that want to have kind of, always on visibility about the baby's sort of health metrics and that kind of stuff. But it also has partnered with it sort of an AI component where it starts to learn the baby's habits and let the mum know where feeding time is coming up, and so she can start pre-prepping the bottle and that kind of thing. It also comes with kind of bands for the parents to wear, so it's kind of whole family health tracking for newborns and parents. So they're just about to launch now with an exclusive partnership with John Lewis.
I was going to say, to work on teenagers.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It sounds like you've got so they're all kind of technology centric.
Exactly,
They're
yeah.
quite a broad, different industries.
Exactly. So typically B2B, but very, very different offerings within that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as the services that you provide, so in addition to the physical housing, it's the whole consultancy and advice. So when you talked about seed funding and those types of things, so would you help with the commercial aspects as well as the potential investors?
We find that the stage that the startups come to Accelerator, again, because we're a business and they have to pay to be there, they've typically raised investment and have their kind of a team of advisors around them, or they've come out of an accelerator program and they'll have some advisors already. And so they're not looking for us to kind of day-to-day advice and support. They will come in, but we do have a lot of in-house expertise on fundraising. We have a network of investors that we work with. So when businesses are at the right stage, we can make introductions. We also work with professional service providers who are interested in getting in front of early stage businesses and forming that relationship. And so at a later stage, when they maybe have more money and need for services, then they're front of mind. And so we've worked with KPMG, we've worked with law firms, and that kind of stuff. That said, we do provide some advice around kind of business and early stage startup stuff to the companies that come in, and it is really interesting that the number of them that kind of aren't aware of lean startup principles or haven't really used them, and they've gone, they've had the sort of more traditional founder's hunch and just gone with that and built something. So teams that are a bit light on that and they want to start testing maybe a new product or an aspect of their business model, then we can provide some advice on how to identify assumptions and how to identify assumptions and what to test first.
Okay. And so if we missed out on the Big Idea Challenge closing last night, midnight, what's the next thing you've got coming up, or a regular thing that we could get involved with?
Next thing, I guess that's one of the great things. We always have stuff happening. And so the best thing for anybody that wants to get involved with Accelerator is to jump on or if you give me your details today, or head to our website where you can join our newsletter. Through the Accelerator newsletter, we promote our weekly schedule of events. We have stuff typically happening, at least 1 or 2 events happening every week. And they might be kind of events for tech founders or for people that want to wrap their heads around branding or marketing or selling through social media, or how to build. We had an event last week which was, I've got an idea for an app but I don't have any tech. Like, how do I do this? Which is a situation lots of people find them in. So the best way to get involved is to come along to those kind of events. We do have sort of occasional social events which you guys as MBA students, I'd be happy to invite you along to come and have a drink and meet some of our community. We've got a couple of, again, probably not a great fit for you guys, but single day expert workshops for food founders, so people developing food and drink based products with a shelf life, and fashion founders, so people that wanted to go into the world of fashion. Launchpad is going to be happening over the summer. We will be doing another startup sprint, but probably not until during the summer or next semester now. And otherwise, we'll be having a quick start program, which is again, it's sort of that's a program that we developed in response to going through the Big Idea competition, and us really focusing on the ideas that do best in that competition are those ideas that are scalable, innovative, or different. So ideas that fit naturally with our Launchpad program. But it meant that lots of London Met students and graduates want to be translators, or they want to be graphic designers, or those kind of businesses which we don't need to go and validate. We know that there's a market for those businesses, and it's really about can we find and convert customers. And so we developed a Quick Start program in response to those kinds of businesses, which is a 4-week program delivered one evening a week or one afternoon a week for 4 weeks, where it's highly practical in its content. And it's like, know who your customers are and what value you create for them. Week 2 is all about developing an online persona, so social media branding. Week 3 is all around finding your first customers, and week 4 is all around the technical stuff like legal, company structures, taxation, self-employment, and that kind of stuff. And so we'll be running one of those in the next couple of months if any of you want to go and freelance or anything like that.
Excellent. Should we throw the floor open? Has anyone got any questions for Simon?
We have about 5 minutes. If you can explain.
Yeah, sure. Look, I just brought these along. This is just, I guess, some of the tools of our trade. And so, when I started at Accelerator, I didn't know about any of this stuff. And so, I guess the world of innovation and new business creation has changed an awful lot in the last 10 years. And so traditionally, certainly when I was at university, the way you would start a business was all about the business plan. And it's like the process of this was, I've got an idea, and the advice you would receive will go and write a business plan. And so you would write a business plan and spend weeks or maybe months kind of labouring over this document. And then once you had a business plan, you would go and raise investment. And then you would raise investment, and you've got the money, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to build the product. And that might be an app, a shop, ordering 10,000 units or 100,000 units from China or whatever it is, getting it all ready, and then launch. And hope that the customers come. And the problem with that approach is that if you've got something wrong in your offer, in your product, in your channel, in your customer, by the time you've done all that, you've spent the money, the time, the energy, and the reputation, you cannot bounce back. And so, that's sort of like a path to failure if you've got something wrong. So instead, the much more modern approach is forget the business plan. And again, the business plan, they're built on so many assumptions that they're effectively a work of fiction. And they're a very poor playbook for actually starting a business. Because typically what you do with it is you put it into a drawer, and you close it, and you never look at it again. And so, they're really favoured by universities because they're a meaty piece of work that you can use for assessment. But nobody in the real world, unless you're raising investment, that's the one time you will need a business plan. No one in the real world will tell you to go and write a business plan anymore. It is a really useful exercise to force you to think about all of the aspects, but don't bother about writing all the kind of, the paragraph and paragraph and paragraph, which, again, you're making assumption after assumption after assumption on. Instead, the much more common tool, how many of you have seen this before? This thing called the business model canvas. Yeah, most of you now, cool. So this is getting out there. So this is what this is. It's developed by a guy called Alexander Osterwalder, which is a Swiss guy, and it's this a visual planning tool which is comprised of 9 blocks, which together describe all of the elements of a business model. And a business model is how a business creates, delivers, and captures value. So it basically describes how the business works. And so it covers, really quickly, who our customer is and the value that we're providing for them, how we're going to find and convert our customers, what the kind of relationship we're going to have with them. Is it transactional, online, or sort of highly personal? Key activities. So what are the things this business has to do really well for it to work? Number one for all businesses, being able to sell. What are the resources, whether they're physical, intellectual, human, that we're going to need to carry out our key activities? Who are we going to partner with? Who are our suppliers or who are our channel partners? And then lastly, how we're going to make money and what it's going to cost us to do that. So again, the great thing about this thing is that it gives you a shared language. So anybody else that knows how to use this tool, it's not complicated. You have a shared language with it. You can very quickly break down complicated businesses and understand how they work. So we use this in a lot of the programs that we run, because it's a great way to help people see the edges of their business. And we find this is quite transformative. So once people see businesses like this, they're like, oh wow, now I understand how my business works. And I can see the edges of it. That tool was, this is all kind of Creative Commons, it's free to use. That tool was sort of, remixed by another guy called Ash Mayura, and remixed because this is a great tool for businesses, but for when you're at a really early stage, pre-business and thinking about a brand new business concept, there are some things you need to be thinking about, which this doesn't anticipate. So for anybody who's familiar with the Lean Startup, so the kind of people, big names in that, a guy called Steve Blank, Eric Ries, who wrote the book, The Lean Startup. And this is all about trying to kind of avoid waste in the kind of startup process or the development cycle. by continually testing assumptions before committing resources to them. And so instead of, for example, and he learned this by kind of trying to build a software product. And they built it in a bunch of different languages and they made them all perfect, and then they released the software product and nobody downloaded it. And then so this whole movement came about through him reflecting on that process and being, well, you know, what do we learn from this? And we learned that people don't want this piece of software. And it's like, well, did we have to build the software in order to learn that? And it was like, well, no, we could have just built it in one language rather than 9 languages, and we could have had the same learning. And then he took it further. He's like, well, actually, you know, if we couldn't even get anybody to kind of come to the website and click the download button, did we even have to build the software in order to learn that? It's like, well, no, we could have just built the website. And so he started to realize that actually to start testing some of these assumptions around value propositions and customer and that kind of stuff, you can do them very quickly and cheaply with committing very few resources to them. So that's where this idea of kind of lean thinking came up. So let's start with our riskiest assumptions. Let's prioritize them and start with the idea killers or the most risky. And let's set about testing and validating those before we go further down this path. And so it's a continual cycle of identifying and testing risky assumptions that you're making in connection with your business. So this guy, Ash, remixed the business model canvas and came up with this adapted version for kind of very, very early stage businesses called the lean canvas. And you'll see here that it's still got the customer as the business model canvas does, but instead of talking about value proposition, he starts with problem. And you know, this is the mindset that kind of people going into this space need to have. They need to stop being solution-led and being in love with their solution, because that's probably the biggest mistake we see. Like, I've had an idea, and because I've had it, it's a great idea. Instead of, and start being problem-led. So what problems do our customers have? And being really clear about the problem. So again, in the customer, you've got a subset here of these is our broad customer group, but who are our earliest adopters? So who are the people that are going to be most interested in trying to jump on a solution to this problem? And here in the problem box, you've got what are the existing alternatives? So how are the customers trying to solve that problem today? Because this is if they're not trying to solve it, well, then that gives you a really important insight into how painful the problem is. If they're not trying to solve it, well, then maybe it's not as painful as you thought it was. Also, looking at existing alternatives, it's like, well, that can give you an indication of how much customers are prepared to spend on a solution. So if they're prepared to spend X on an underperforming solution, then they might be able to pay Y for one that performs better, or at least the same amount. So instead of pushing to start with these 2 areas, and then goes into kind of some other areas which are, again, similar, channels, unfair advantage is an important one. So again, what's going to stop this business being cannibalized by someone else? Why is this an opportunity for you guys? And some other stuff which I won't go into. But I'm really happy to provide copies of all of these, hard copies if you want them. They're freely available online, or I can provide digital copies if you'd like. But if you'd like a hard copy, then maybe I can give some to the guys that are at Accelerator a bit, and they can bring them back next time. 2 other books that I'll talk about really quickly are, and I stumbled across this a couple of years ago, and I absolutely love it. I give it to just about everybody that comes through our programs. And it's a freely available book you can download. If you head to talkingtohumans.com, you can download the PDF and the EPUB version if you've got an e-reader, or I can give you a hard copy. These are about $10 on Amazon, but we have our own copies made, and so we're happy to give them out. And what this is, it's around, the subtitle here is Success Starts with Understanding Your Customers. And this is probably the biggest mindset shift that's required for entrepreneurs. And it's like, again, instead of being in your own head and being in love with your own solution, be in love with your customers' problems. Because the customers don't exist to buy, you exist to solve their problems. Okay? And so unless you're creating something that customers love, they're not going to be interested. And the best way to do that is to understand what they value and what their pains are. So the easiest way to try and start being customer-led and sort of being, working with evidence, the fastest and cheapest way to do that is to talk to customers, talk to your potential customers. Now, that's only useful if you're having effective conversations with them. And a really great way to have an ineffective conversation is to say, hi, my name's Simon, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm working on a new app that enables busy families that own pets to have find people to come around and walk their dogs for them. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in? And people say, yeah, it sounds pretty big. I've got a dog and we're pretty busy. So yeah, that does sound like something I'd be interested in. And it's like, and would you be prepared to pay about 10 to 15 pounds to have someone walk your dog? I would. I would be prepared to pay that much. And so basically, firstly, people don't want to give you, if you go and say, hey, I'm working on this, the subtext is, I'm really passionate about this and it's my idea, please tell me it's a good idea. And people are very bad at confrontation, particularly with strangers in the street. So they're unlikely to give you unvarnished and really honest feedback. And so if you ask leading questions like that, or closed questions, you know, is this a good idea? Then you're really going to pollute the kind of feedback that you get. Instead, what this book gives you is a framework for how to have open conversations or insightful conversations by asking open questions. And so you don't talk about the solution at all, and it's really built around understanding the problem. And so you want to get customers talking about past experiences using open questions. Tell me about the last time that you ... So anyway, it's a great framework for doing that. This is like the sequel, which is once you've come up with a solution, how to test it. And so lots of really, really practical stuff on, you know, I've talked about kind of testing ideas and being evidence or validation led. This is a book on how to do that. So happy to give you all copies of both of those. And you can go away and become experts on how to take your idea to validated concept. So I love to, once I get going, I love to talk, okay?
We have less than 10 minutes.
All right, any questions? What is our time?
We have like 9 minutes.
9 minutes. Questions for Simon?
I have the contact details of the new MBA students, and I've mentioned to them that I would share them with you. So like the email address,
yeah, sure.
You can add them to the existing.
Yeah, if you like, I mean, if anybody doesn't want to be added, just tell Nora and she won't send your details on. Otherwise, if you're okay, I'll add your details to our Student Enterprise newsletter, which goes out once a month, and the Accelerator newsletter, which should have a weekly kind of, this is the events this week at Accelerator. So again, if you don't want to be on there, you can unsubscribe at any time, no worries. But if you can pass those details to me, that would be great.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.